Okay, welcome everyone. So we'll continue where we have left yesterday. So we have already discussed about DDL, creating a table, altering the table. So now that we are going to talk about most important topic of database design called as the constraints. What the constraint is? Constraint is a way of enforcing the rule in the database and it maintains the integrity of database. Simple. What's the meaning of maintaining the integrity? This constraint makes sure the values in the column will be the accurate according to our requirement. In simple words, you can say constraint is nothing but a set of rules we apply on particular table. Now, when we talk about the constraint can be applied while creating a table, or even you have already created the table, you can apply afterwards also. So for that purpose, we can say that constraint clause is an optional part of a create table statement or a alter table statement. Now, a constraint is either a column level or a table level. Now, even though the word is given as a table level, but actually always constraints are applied on the columns. So what's the difference between column level and table level? So when we say that a column level and table level, it's very simple to understand. A column level constraint refers to a single column in the table, and in that we do not specify the column name, except there is a one constraint called as check constraint. They refer to a column that they follow. So simply, you can say that in a column level constraint, it follow the column. Simply, whichever column it is following, that column will affect that particular constraint. A table level constraint, in this, we have to specify name of the column on which we want to apply the constraint. Now, hence, column level constraint can refer only one column to it follow. So it can be always a single column. But table level constraint, we give the name of the column. So the table level constraint can refer to one or more than one columns. Now, there are certain types of constraint, starting with primary key, unique, check, foreign key, not null, and default. So now we'll talk about all the constraints, starting with a primary key and go ahead. So first constraint we'll talk about. Okay, before going to talk about a constraint, we will talk about a null value. Because for writing a query, understanding the null value is the most important part. What the null value is? Null value in database, when you are not providing any value, that is empty, considered as a null. But while you retrieve the data back from the table, it does not considered as empty. It is considered as a null. So in simple words, we can say that null is always an unknown value. Hence, it is an unknown value. Two nulls cannot be the same. Plus, arithmetic between null and null is always a null. Very simple to understand. We have certain numbers we don't know. We have another certain numbers we don't know. And if we make any arithmetic operation with the null, the result also will be we don't know, because it is considered as an unknown value. So simply you can say a null value means that a value is unknown or a missing value. A value of null is different from empty or zero. So this is always we make a mistake. We consider the null as an empty or a zero. See, while providing the value, it accepts a empty, but it does not considered as an empty. That is the important part you have to understand. Simple. After the null value, now we'll talk about the constraint. So the first constraint in our constraint list is a primary key. Now, at the time of ER model, we have discussed about a primary key, but that was a virtual. Means we have thought or we have decided that this column could be acting as a primary key. But just by thinking that this column is a primary key, chances of errors are very high. So we put a constraint called primary key. Now, what's a primary key? Definition will be the same what we have discussed earlier. That is, it's a single or a combination of fields that uniquely define a record. Second rule, none of the fields that are a part of primary key can contain a null value. Third point is very simple. A table can have only and only one primary key. Now, this primary key constraint can be applied either while creating a table. So this can be a part of create table statement, or if we have already created a table, then it will be a part of alter table statement. Simple and major important thing, a table can have at most one primary key. You cannot have more than one constraint of primary key on the table. It does not mean that only one column can be a primary key. Primary key can be a combination of one column, or it could be a combination of multiple columns as well. Okay, so now syntax wise, how do we apply the constraint? The syntax for creating a primary key using a create table, it's very simple. Same syntax we write: create table, table name, column, data type, and followed by constraint. Now this is following the column one. Hence, it is a column label constraint. And at the end, we have add one extra syntax called as constraint, constraint name, constraint type, and column. It is containing the column on which we are applying the constraint. This will be the table level constraint. Okay, let's understand in a practical way. Come here. Okay, now here we have created one table in our learning series that was students. So we can say select star from students. So these are the three things we are having here. Or yesterday, I think we have created 2021. We'll go to this. Mukesh, correct? Now in this, according to us, which column should act as a identifier? Obvious, it should be the roll number. So now can we say the roll number is a primary key for us? Yes, but that is just a conceptual. Now, even if I insert a record, I say insert into students 2021 values, and I'm providing here again roll number 1. Practically, it should not be there, but this roll number we are assuming as a primary key, but Oracle does not have any such kind of information. So even if I'm providing the same value as 1, and let's say the name is another one, Rakesh. Simple. Age 25, gender M, and rest will keep a blank. So we have inserted one more record. Now, if we see the record here, we have two records, Mukesh and Rakesh, correct? But if I try to identify with their primary key, so I can write it here, where ID equal to, so not ID, it's a roll number, where roll number equal to 1. So how much record I should get? Actually, I should get only 1, but problem here is it has accepted the 2 as a same roll number. So I'm getting the 2 records. Now making sure that roll number should not be duplicated, we can take a help of primary. So when we will apply a constraint primary key, that time, it is just following the 2 rules, or you can say 2 rules will automatically applied on this particular column. Rule number 1, once the constraint primary key applied, it will not accept duplicate value. That's most obvious, because duplicate value is the only thing which is not allowing us to retrieve a unique records. And second, roll number cannot be the empty. जिस पर्टिकुलर कॉलम की वजह से आप किसी को डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हो उसकी वैल्यू होना भी कंपल्शन है. So let's apply the constraint. Simple. So table is already created. So we are going to take a help of alter table statement. So what is the alter table statement? ALTER. Alter table. Simple. Then we'll say the add. I think we have learned this add. That was adding the column. But this time we are adding a constraint. So we'll say add constraints, then constraint name. Name has to be provided by you according to your requirement. Usually we follow some naming feature. So that always helps us what name we have given. So currently we are providing a primary key constraint. So I always have a habit to use that a PK, primary key, underscore. Choose the column on which we are applying the constraint. So we are applying the constraint on roll number. So I say the roll number. Then finally choose that column on which we are applying the constraint. And that table is student 2021. Very simple here. Then syntax wise, add. Up till here it is just for alter table. Now actual syntax is constraint, constraint name, then constraint type. What type of constraint we are applying? Primary key. Then in the bracket, you have to choose that column on which we are applying the constraint. So can we say we are applying the constraint on roll number? So we will say roll number and close it. Now, this is a perfect syntax, but still we can get an error. Reason? Rule of primary key is कि roll number column में duplicate नहीं होना चाहिए, and we already have. So this is violating. So it will not allow us to apply the primary key on this column. We got an error, cannot validate this primary key violated. Very simple. So one thing is clear to everyone, that what constraint you are applying on already existing table, then that column should follow the rules what you are applying. If the data is not compatible to that particular constraint, then it will not accept that constraint. So now manually first, what we have to do? We have to change one of the roll number as a different. So we'll say here, update, I'm changing the value. Table name, Bollywood, not Bollywood, sorry, it's a students. Students. students 2021 set roll number equal to 2. We'll make it for Rakesh. So we have to say here where name equal to Rakesh. Now if I execute, we got a message, one row updated. So one row updated. Now if I check the record, we can have 1 for Mukesh, 2 for Rakesh. Simple. Now this will accept the syntax. And we got a message, table is altered. So table altered means what has happened? On this table, roll number column पे primary key constraint apply हो गया. अब primary key का rule क्या है? It cannot accept a duplicate. It cannot accept a null. Let's check it out. Let's say Rakesh, Mukesh, and we can have Tikesh. And I'm providing the same roll number, which is already given to the Mukesh. But now we have a primary key on this. It will make sure कि ये value duplicate नहीं होनी चाहिए. So here we got an error. This constraint is violated. Simple. So now we will be sure that roll number will not have duplicate values. Very simple here. Now, what if I'm not providing the roll number? Still, it is not going to accept. Null cannot be inserted. So now this primary key applied on this roll number. If I give a different number, 3 will be accepted. Very simple here. Now we got 3 records. Now we are very sure कि इसमें कोई duplicate value नहीं होगी, plus इसमें कोई null value नहीं होगी. Clear here? Now let's say I'm trying to add one more primary key on this table. And that one more we'll provide on, let's say the name. So I say alter table, table name, add constraint, pk underscore roll number की जगह पे हम यहाँ पे use करते हैं name. And we'll change a column. But a table can have only one primary key, so it is not going to be accepted. Simple. So 3 rules of primary key is 1, no duplicate. 2nd, no null value. 3rd, a table can have only one primary key. So this is a simple concept of a primary. Let's come back here. Okay, so primary key. This is the syntax for using the alter table command. We have already done this right now. Now, once you have created, you can drop the primary key, enable or disable as well. Syntax is very simple. Alter table, table name. If I want to drop, we'll use a keyword drop, constraint, constraint name. For disable, syntax will remain the same. Only difference is instead of drop, we'll talk about a disable. And for enable, exactly the same, but instead of disable, we'll use a enable. So you can enable the constraint, disable the constraint, and drop the constraint. So I hope primary key constraint is clear. Yes. Now next constraint is called a not null. The name itself describes that when we apply this constraint, column will not accept null value. Very simple, not null. By default, all the column are accepting the null value. But let's say हमें किसी का नाम null नहीं चाहिए. We want name should be there. So we will be using the not null constraint. One more thing about the not null constraint, it is a strictly column level constraint. That means it should follow the constraint, follow the column. So syntax will little bit different. Now let's come back here. Okay, now let's say we are going to check the records. We have 3 records. Now let's say I want to put name as a not null. मतलब name not null value होनी चाहिए. Not null मतलब null accept नहीं करना चाहिए. Very simple. So for that, what we have to do here now, we cannot use this statement. We have to use a alter table students 2021. Now we cannot use a add command. Add means we are adding the constraint and we are giving the column name to the constraint. But here we have to follow the column. So we will use modify command. Modify what? Column. Which column we are modifying? Name. You have to give a data type again. Varchar 2. Then in the bracket, the size what we have given. And it should follow with constraint not null. Now if we execute this, we got a message table is altered. Now let's say we are trying to insert the ID number 4 और हमारे पास उसका नाम नहीं है. So I'm keeping it blank. But hence on the column name, not null constraint is applied. So it is not going to accept. Cannot insert null into name. Very simple here. By default, all the column are accepting the null value. And after applying the not null constraint, they will not accept null value. Very, very simple. Let's move ahead. After the not null, third constraint is called as unique constraint. Now, what is the meaning of the unique? It's very simple. Unique means unique. The difference between the primary key and unique is primary key also accepting the unique value. Duplicate is not accepted. Unique constraint is also accepting unique values. But the difference is unique constraint allow the null values, whereas primary key does not allow the null value. Very simple here. So when we have primary key which is not allowing the duplicate, then why we have a separate constraint unique? Reason for that is a table can have only one primary key, but unique constraint can be multiple. So constraint can be applied more than once in the table except primary key. Plus, you can apply more than one constraint on the same column. A unique constraint is also nothing but single or a combination of field that uniquely define a record. But only problem is it accepts a null value. Let's see the difference here between the unique and primary, because this is mostly asked question. So let's check it here. I'm opening an Excel sheet to explain you the properly here. Give me a second. Okay, so let's come to the Excel sheet, so it will be easy for us to understand. Now let's say we have one table. Okay, so a table is creating here. Let's say this is the table. Okay, so we have a one column, ID, second column, name, third column, let's say the PAN card, And fourth column, let's say the date of birth. Okay. On this, if we apply primary key, now can we say that this column has applied the primary key? So it will not accept duplicate. Will it accept the one? Yes. Second one? No. No duplicate will be allowed. But let's say on the name, we are applying the unique constraint. Will it accept the name Raja? Yes. Again Raja? No. If I'm not giving the ID and I'm keeping it blank and I'm writing it here, RAJA Raja 2. Now, will it allowed? No, because primary key does not allow the null as well as duplicate. But let's say here if I give a value as 2, accepted, and here I'm not giving any value blank. Now this null is allowed. Simple, this will be allowed because this is unique. But here it is not allowing the blank. That's the difference between unique and primary key. Very simple to understand here. So simple. But in the unique constraint, let's say I am using a 1 or 2 column as a unique. Now this time I'm creating a unique as both of them. So in that case, if I'm using the 1 here, null here, allowed. Can I have the null again here? No, because now it will check the partial uniqueness. Here if I'm having the 1, then this null is not allowed. So simply understanding that unique constraint will allow the null value as far as partial uniqueness is maintained. Very simple. And about the primary key, no column will accept a null value which is a part of primary key. Here, let's move ahead. So syntax wise exactly the same. Create table के साथ में भी कर सकते हो और alter table के साथ में भी कर सकते हो. So syntax wise exactly the same. Constraint, constraint name, constraint type is changed. Instead of primary key, we say the unique constraint. Very simple. Then you can give the columns. So it will not accept the duplicate value. Very simple here. Now you can drop the constraint, disable the constraint, enable the constraint. Syntax wise, exactly the same what we have used for primary key. Now see the syntax here. Alter table, table name, drop, constraint, constraint name. Now if I'm giving the name as pk underscore id, primary key will drop. And if I'm giving the name which is belong to constraint of unique, unique constraint will drop. So syntax is almost the exact the same, only the name of the constraint will define which constraint you are dropping. Same way you can disable and enable the constraint. Very simple here. Next. This is the most important part, which is asked what's the difference between the unique constraint and primary key. So primary key, none of the fields that are a part of primary key can accept a null value. Okay, comparison with the unique constraint, some of the field can accept a null value as far as you maintain a partial uniqueness. Simple. Only one primary key can be defined per table. Constraint can be multiple. Third major difference. Foreign key can take a reference only from primary key, not from unique constraint. Very simple here. It can accept only from primary key, not from unique constraint. Okay, just make sure that you have to pay attention very carefully. This is a, you can say, frequently asked question. Now, the fourth one is a check constraint. So check constraint is a little bit important because the check constraint is also called as row level constraint. Plus, it is also called as a business rule constraint. Till now, whatever the constraint we have learned, primary key, not null, unique, their rules are predefined. आपको अलग से रूल देने की जरूरत नहीं है. Rules are predefined. That means primary key duplicate will not be accepted. That is the rule. Very simple. If that is the rule, in that case, what will happen? If that is the rule, that means rule is already given by the system. Not null, rule is already provided. Unique, rule is already provided. But sometimes we need a different rules to be applied on the column. For an example, let's say we have decided किसी भी स्टूडेंट्स का मार्क्स जो हमारे यहाँ एडमिशन लेता है उसका 90 से कम नहीं होना चाहिए. Simple. So no other constraint can help us in that. If I apply the primary key, then it will not accept a duplicate, but any value can be accepted. It will not accept a duplicate, but any value can be accepted. Very simple. But check constraint help us to give us a condition as well. So the difference between the check constraint and other constraint is, in other constraints, conditions are predefined, and the check constraint, you have to define the condition. Simple. Now, let's understand with an example. Let's come to our practice session here. Now in this, let's check the record. Now we have a gender. अब हमारे हिसाब से gender में it is a character, can accept any character but only one character, whether M, N, P, Q, R. But hence this we have to use only for M and F. कोई और वहां पे नहीं जाना चाहिए. Now for an example, let's say I say here insert into table values. I'm using a 4 and let me give the name as Ria. And here, if I'm not giving this and I use it as a P. Now P is not actually the gender, but it's accepted. Okay, so the data entry is done. P is accepted. अब हम नहीं बता सकते कि रिया मेल है या फीमेल है. So we have to make sure कि यहाँ पे जो भी वैल्यू जाए, that value must be among male or a female. So other constraint cannot help us. So we have to take a help of check constraint. Simple. So for that, simply we can say here, add the constraint. So we'll use the same statement here. So alter table, table name, add constraints. Now here we are using a check constraint. So we can see कौन से कॉलम पे अप्लाई करने वाले हैं हम, जेंडर पे. So we'll use it here gender. अब प्राइमरी की जगह कौन सा कंस्ट्रेंट यूज कर रहे हैं हम लोग, सिंपल. कौन से कॉलम पे, जेंडर. बट यहाँ पे हम सिर्फ जेंडर नहीं देंगे, we have to give it along with the condition. So gender should be in 2 characters, that is either M or F. अब ये सिर्फ M और F ही यहाँ पे accept करेगा. So if I execute this, currently I'll get an error because we already have a P. As I told you that जो भी constraint हमको apply करना है उस constraint के compatible data होना चाहिए. यहाँ पे P है, so it is not going to accept this. So first we have to change this. So we'll say update student set. Roll number की जगह पे हम क्या change कर रहे हैं? Gender equal to P. Where, sorry, not P, we have to make it here F, where name equal to Priya. Okay, spelling mistake is done here, so we'll change gender. One row is updated. Now if we check the record, it is F, correct? Now I'll apply this constraint. Table is altered, so this constraint is applied on the column gender, which will accept only M or F. Let's check it out. 5. Okay, and we can make it here Priya, and I'm trying to give a P here, and let's execute. It will not accept the P. Now it will accept the value among M or F. Very simple here. So here when I make it F will be accepted. So simple here. So now simply the check constraint is nothing but it is a user defined rule. It is nothing but a user defined rule. That's it. So simple here. चेक कंस्ट्रेंट में आपको सिर्फ क्या ध्यान में रखना है? सबसे पहला, ये व्यू पे अप्लाई नहीं हो सकता. सेकेंड थिंग, अगर आपका चेक कंस्ट्रेंट किसी और कॉलम को रेफर कर रहा है तो वो कॉलम उसी टेबल का होना चाहिए. सेकेंड थिंग. थर्ड थिंग, इसमें आप सब कंडीशन नहीं दे सकते. So in technical words, you can say that a check constraint cannot include an SQL subquery. And fourth important thing, it cannot accept such a value which is implicitly keep on changing. For an example, current date. Current date will be keep on changing every day. So you cannot refer to that type of columns or values. Very simple. And we have taken one example as well. Now let's see here. Here we have applied the check constraint. Create table, table name. Then we have given certain columns and we have given one constraint here. Constraint, check, supplier ID. It's the name of the constraint. Check, type of the constraint. कौन से कॉलम पे अप्लाई कर रहे हैं? सप्लायर आईडी. And we have given here between 100 and 9999. So in that case, what will happen? Simply, it will accept a value within this range. 100 से कम की वैल्यू एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेगा और 999 से ज्यादा की वैल्यू भी वो एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेगा. वेरी सिंपल. वन मोर एग्जांपल. यहां पे हमने क्या यूज किया है? कंस्ट्रेंट, कंस्ट्रेंट नेम, चेक, सप्लायर नेम, अपर सप्लायर नेम. मतलब यहाँ पे जो भी सप्लायर का नाम है वो सिर्फ अपर केस में ही एक्सेप्ट करेगा. That's simple. So now we are allowed to give a condition of our required of a organization. So check constraint is, that's why it is called as a business rule constraint. Now, same thing I have done with the help of alter table statement. What's the difference? Alter table, table name, add constraint, constraint name, check. Supplier name, in, dalda, vanaspati, pure. What's the meaning? Same thing what we have done practically here. That is gender in M or F. So यहाँ पे supplier name क्या होगा? या तो डालडा या वनस्पति या प्योर. Simple. Let's move ahead. Check constraint also can be dropped, disabled, or enabled. Check constraint also can be dropped, disabled, or enabled. Syntax will remain the same what we have learned till now. Very simple. Okay. So we understood the check constraint clearly. Now the next constraint is a foreign key. We know that foreign key is an important constraint in RDBMS because foreign key create a relationship between the tables. So now when we talk about a foreign key, what is a foreign key? Foreign key means it always take a reference from one of the primary. So जिस table से वो reference लेगा, that table will be called as a parent table, and the table who is taking the reference will considered as a child table. Very simple here. Now, foreign key can be defined either with a create table statement or alter table statement. Understand with a practical way. Now let's say we'll go here back. Can I remove all this? Yes. Okay. Now we have a one table. Select star from students 2021. And if I execute. Okay, now we have 5 records. Now let's create another table. Simple. I'm creating another table, and that table is a marks. Marks for these students stored in a different table. Very simple. So I'll create a table here. Create table marks, in which we will take roll number 3, and I'm taking a subject. Let's say one is English. Number 3. And we'll have one more as SQL. Also the number 3. Okay, so I have created one table. Marks is already available, so we'll make a marks 2021. Created. Now if I'll insert a record, let's say we have the students, correct? In the students, we are giving a marks to, let's say, the Priya. So how we are going to insert a record? Insert into marks 2021. Yeah. Then I'll just say values. In the values, I provide the value for Priya. So roll number क्या आएगा उसका? 5. Let's say instead of 5, by mistake, I am giving a 15. And I'm giving the marks as English 85 and SQL we say the 90. its row is inserted. Now if we check the record and I say select star from marks 2021. Can you tell me 85 और 90 किसको मिला है? Answer is no, we cannot, because हम इस रोल नंबर को चेक कहाँ पे करते हैं? इस टेबल में, और यहाँ पे इस रोल नंबर का कोई स्टूडेंट नहीं है. I hope you are getting me. Simple, we are saying that कि यहाँ पे हम उस रोल नंबर को इंसर्ट कर रहे हैं जो एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करता. सो ऐसी गलत एंट्री नहीं होनी चाहिए. So for that purpose, what we can do now? We can apply a foreign key. Simple here. So simply how to apply the foreign key? Syntax will be the same. We will say here alter table. कौन से टेबल पे अप्लाई कर रहे हैं? Marks. So we'll say marks 2021. Add. What are we adding? Constraint. Add constraint. Constraint name fk underscore roll number underscore marks 2021. To add constraint, constraint name, constraint type is foreign, sorry, it's a foreign. On which column we are applying? Roll number, sorry, not here, on this. We are applying on the roll number. So we'll say here, roll number. Correct? I'll close it. अब ये roll number क्या होना चाहिए? It should be within these roll numbers. So we use an additional statement called as references. Simple here. Now in the references, we have to choose the table जहां से हम reference लेने वाले हैं. So we are going to take a reference from students 2021. We say here students 2021. In the bracket, इस table में से कौन से column से reference लेंगे? Roll number. So we'll say here roll number and I'll close. Simple, same syntax. Alter table, table name, add constraint, constraint name, constraint type, roll number. Additional thing is references. Reference. Now here this will be the parent table and this will be the child table. Now if I execute, again we are getting an error क्योंकि हमने यहाँ पे ID number 15 add किया था, which is not available in this table. That's why we get error. Cannot validate parent key not found. Because if you check the record, ये जो 15 है, इसका parent key available नहीं है. So either I should have a extra record in this with the ID roll number 15, or I have to change this first. So we'll change it here. We'll say update marks 2021 set roll number equal to 5. Okay, so 15 की जगह पे हम क्या चेंज कर रहे हैं? 5. Now if we check the records, this is 5 available. So now if I apply this constraint, it is applied. अब इसको अप्लाई करने का फायदा क्या हुआ? अब ये ऐसा कोई नंबर एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेगा जो पेरेंट टेबल में नहीं है. Simple here. Now let's check it out. Insert into this and I'm trying to insert a 15. अब ये एक्सेप्ट ही नहीं कर रहा है 15 because we have applied the constraint foreign. Clear here? So if I give it here something else, let's say the 2. 2 is available in our student table? Yes. So it is going to be accepted. Now, if you check the record, accept the 5, accept the 2. Will it accept a null value? Answer is yes. Foreign key accept a null value. Foreign key accept the null value. Clear? So can we say the foreign key is clear to everyone? Very simple here. Let's come back. So simply we can say here, foreign key means that value in one table must appear in another table. जैसे अभी हमने value 15 insert की, it is not accepted because it is not appear in its parent table. The reference table is called as parent table, while the table with foreign key is called as child table. Very simple. The child table will be referenced to a primary key in a parent table. That is simple. It can be created with the help of create table statement or alter table statement. Now, syntax wise, we have seen that. What's the difference? Additional thing we have added? References. So syntax wise, constraint, constraint name, foreign key, column, references, parent table name, and columns. Simple here. This is an example, what we have done the practical. Now the last one is called a default constraint. What's the meaning of the default? Default means a value which will be implicitly taken by the database if user is not providing any value. Now simple. Let's check with the example. Let's remove everything here. Okay, so I'm removing this also. We have this. Okay. Now in this, let's say we'll use a for gender. If somebody is not providing the gender, by default, he should be considered as a male. So we can say the M will be the default value until you are not providing any other value here. So what you have to do simply here, you have to apply the constraint. Can we say alter table students 2021. Alter table, table name. Then we'll say here modify. Why we are using the modify? Because default is also a column level constraint. So we say the modify and we are modifying the column as gender. So we'll say gender, alter table, table name, modify the gender, data type, char, size 1, and just add it default. And default value we are going to provide as M. Okay, so we have changed it here. Table is altered, right? Now, in this, let's try to insert a record. If we say insert into students 2021 values, let's say we are not going to provide the value for everything. We provide only the roll number and name. So we'll say here roll number and name. That means we are providing the value only for 2 columns. And let's say the age as well. Okay, now value we'll provide here, roll number 6, name, we can call as XYZ. We don't know the name, so we are putting the name XYZ. Age, let's say the 27, and I'll close. Now you can see that we are providing only the 3 values, but my table contain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. So if I execute this, rows inserted. हमने यहाँ पे gender value provide नहीं की है, but XYZ is by default M. क्योंकि हमने यहाँ पे default value set कर दी थी, that is a M, so it is considered automatically as M. That's a default value. Very simple here. Now let's come back here. So can I say that default is clear? So with this, we have finished constraint part of our database management system. Okay, so we'll continue in the next lecture. So by the time we'll stop here.